There are 7 of you at the table. The bill comes to $364. Someone does the math out loud, rounds up for the tip, and lands on $52 each. Then someone says the thing that always gets said at tables like this one. It sounds like kindness. It is really just momentum. Let's just split it evenly. It's easier. You have already opened the banking app under the edge of the table. You opened it before the plates were cleared, before the question was even asked. Some part of you always knows the number before anyone says it out loud. You knew it when the third appetizer arrived, the one you didn't order and wouldn't eat. You knew it when the second bottle appeared and nobody flinched. $52 is the difference between fine and not fine until Friday. $52 is the electric bill you moved to autopay so you would stop feeling it leave. $52 is the exact size of a gap you spend most of your waking energy pretending isn't there. You lock the phone. You turn it face down on the table, screen to the wood, as if the number could be overheard. You smile, and you say, "Sure, even is fine," and nobody notices anything, because there is nothing to notice. That is the whole point of this group. That is, quietly, what it is for. The 7 of you have known each other since school. Same neighborhood, same classrooms, same bus stop in the same gray morning, same starting line, but the starting line, you are beginning to understand, is the only thing that ever stayed the same. In the 10 years since, money has moved through each of your lives differently, quietly, without any announcement, never in a single dramatic event. Always in the slow direction of the small choices each of you made and the ones each of you didn't make on 1,000 ordinary Tuesdays no one will ever remember. Here is the thing nobody tells you when you are 23 and splitting a bill with the people you love. Your friend group is not permanent. It is not a fixed set of names you will carry, unchanged, to the end of your life. It is a mirror, and what it reflects back at you changes at every single level of wealth you pass through. Tonight, it is reflecting something very specific. Sit still and look closely, because you are about to watch the whole thing happen in fast forward. Your friend group is a mirror. One thing before we go further. This is one story, not a law. Your own numbers, your city, your people will all differ. Take the shape of it, not the specifics. At this level, everyone around you is in roughly the same position. That is not an accident of who you happen to like. It is the invisible function of the group, the reason it feels so effortless to belong to. Nobody here is doing well enough to make you feel like you are falling behind. And, just as importantly, nobody here is doing badly enough to make you feel responsible for pulling them up. You are all held gently at the same height, like water finding one level across 7 glasses. The nights out are affordable because all of you quietly agree to pick affordable places. The conversations are about jobs, not careers, about rent, not mortgages, about what's on tonight, not what you're building with your one and only life. The group is warm and familiar, and it asks nothing of you financially that you cannot give. You love these people. Understand that clearly. Hold on to it because it matters for everything that comes next, and it will be easy to forget. The love is real. The love is not the problem. Anyone who tells you the answer is to cut off the people who knew you when is selling you something ugly. That is not this. The problem is subtler than love or its absence. The problem is that comfort has a price, and the price never shows up on any bill you can see. The price is paid in the absence of friction. Nobody in this circle ever makes you feel the distance between where you are and where you could be. Nobody asks the question that would sting a little. Nobody looks at what you're doing, month after identical month, and says, gently, without cruelty, "Is this it? Is this really the ceiling you want?" And without that friction, without a single grain of sand in the machine, you don't move. You start to notice it in small ways, if you notice it at all. Every conversation seems to curve back to the exact place it began, like a track. The same complaints about the same bosses, polished from repetition, the same jokes worn smooth as river stones, the same plans that everyone agrees, loudly, are good plans, and that no one ever actually begins. You leave these nights full and warm and laughing. And then somewhere on the walk home, underneath all of it, you feel it. faint, unmistakable. The specific heaviness of a person who has not moved in a long time and has just, for 1 second, remembered it. Because a mirror can only ever show you what is already standing in front of it. It cannot show you a door. It cannot show you tomorrow. It can only, faithfully, endlessly, show you now. And right now, standing in front of it, 7 faces, lit by the same cheap, warm light, nobody in the group has moved. When one friend gets ahead, nobody in the group has moved. And then, one of you does. His name is Daniel. You have known Daniel since you were 9 years old, since the summer you both learned to ride bikes down the same cracked hill and crashed into the same hedge. He is not smarter than you, not more disciplined, not more gifted, not luckier in any way you could put your finger on and resent cleanly, but he gets a new job, not a dramatically better one, $18,000 more a year, enough to quietly change the math underneath his life without changing a single thing you could see from the outside. At first, nothing happens. That is how these things always start. Nothing happens. Then, slowly, so slowly, you could never name the day it began, the small things start. Daniel stops suggesting the cheap places. One night, he suggests a restaurant with no prices you recognize on the menu, and nobody at the table says a word about it, because nobody wants to be the person who mentions the prices. He orders the second bottle without turning it over to check the number first. He waves off the change with a flat hand, casual, like it was never his. Little gestures, each one meaningless on its own. Each one a tiny flag planted in new ground. A signal that the earth under him has shifted a few degrees and is not shifting back. The dynamic of the whole group changes, and no one names it. Naming it would make it real, and everyone has silently agreed to keep it unreal a little longer. But you feel it. You start to feel something you have never once felt toward Daniel in 20 years of friendship. You feel, faintly, and ashamed of it even as it happens, left behind. Left behind by a person you have known since you were both 9 years old and bleeding from the same hedge. And here is what is strange. What is worth stopping and sitting inside of for a moment. Daniel didn't change. Daniel is the same person he was 6 months ago. The same jokes, the same laugh, the same loyalty. The money changed what was possible for him, and possibility radiates off a person whether they mean it to or not. Possibility, it turns out, is contagious in one direction and isolating in the other. 2 social scientists, Nicholas Christakis and James Fowler, spent years tracing how behavior actually travels through a network of friends. What they found is unsettlingly literal. Habits, spending, even your private sense of what counts as normal, spread from friend to friend to friend like a current, mostly without anyone ever deciding to pass them along. You are downstream of the people you sit with. So is Daniel. So is everyone at that table. When someone close to you rises, one part of you rises with them, quietly, genuinely glad. And another part of you, the part that is not ready, the part still sitting at the old level, feels the distance crack open like a draft under a door you didn't know was there. So you do the thing almost everyone does at this exact moment. The thing that feels like keeping up and is really falling further behind. You start spending money you don't have to close a gap that money was never able to close. And here is the blunt truth almost nobody will say to your face. The problem was never that Daniel started earning more. The problem is what the comparison quietly did to you and what you chose to do about the feeling. Not dramatically. Nobody does this dramatically. Just the extra round you didn't need. Just the Uber home instead of the train. Just the yes when the honest answer, the one that would have quietly protected your whole future, was not this time. And one night, flat on your back, staring at a ceiling you cannot afford to stare at forever, you realize something for the very first time. Your social life has a cost, a real one, a number with a comma in it, and you have never, not once, sat down and actually calculated it. The hidden cost of belonging. You have never calculated it because you were never supposed to. Nobody is. The cost of belonging is engineered to be invisible, paid in tiny, forgettable installments. So by the time you finally notice the total at the bottom, you have already agreed to it 100 separate times, each time for an amount too small to argue about. So you do the uncomfortable thing. You sit down, one gray Sunday afternoon with a coffee going cold beside you, and you actually add it up. The rounds, the dinners, the birthday group gifts, where your name goes on the card, the trips someone plans in a group chat that you cannot be the only one to skip. The little, constant, low-grade bleed of keeping pace with a group whose baseline moved without ever asking your permission or checking your balance. The number is bigger than you expected. It is always bigger than you expected. That is the nature of costs you refuse to look at. They grow precisely in the dark you leave them in. And now you are holding a genuinely uncomfortable piece of knowledge, the kind you can never quite put back down once you have picked it up. Every dollar spent staying comfortable inside this group, at this level, is a dollar not spent becoming a person who could one day stand at a different one. Comfort, it turns out, is not free, and it is not cheap. Comfort is the single most expensive thing you will ever buy, precisely because it never once sends you an invoice. You do not make a dramatic decision. People almost never do, and the ones who announce dramatic decisions are usually the ones who don't keep them. You don't give a speech. You don't post anything. You don't sit the group down. You just, quietly, on one ordinary week, start saying no to one thing. And then, the week after, to another. You let one invitation pass, and you start running one quiet question before every yes. Does this bring me closer to the person I am trying to become? Or does it only keep tonight comfortable? It is a small rule, almost embarrassingly small. But asked often enough, it becomes the whole difference between merely spending your 20s and quietly using them to build wealth. You keep the money that used to evaporate every single weekend without leaving a trace, and you move it somewhere a Thursday night impulse can't reach it. Somewhere boring, somewhere with a little friction of its own, and nothing happens. No applause, no transformation, no music swelling. Nobody notices. And if they did notice, they would not understand. And if they understood, they might not like it. The number in the account creeps upward by an amount so small it would genuinely embarrass you to say it out loud. But you notice. You. For the first time, in a long, still, comfortable time, you are moving, by an inch, in a direction you chose. And the group, the warm and familiar mirror, has absolutely no idea, because a mirror cannot reflect emotion it has never once been shown, drifting apart without a fight. At first, you don't see the old group less on purpose. This part is important, so do not let anyone rewrite it later into something colder than it was. There is no fight, no falling out, no dramatic betrayal, no slammed door, no clean villain that would at least give you a tidy story to tell yourself on the bad nights. Instead, your calendar simply, quietly, starts filling with different things. A course on Tuesday nights, the one you almost talked yourself out of in the parking lot. A Saturday morning you begin, awkwardly at first, to fence off and protect for your own work. The work no one asked you to do, the work no one would notice or mourn if you quietly stopped. A dinner with someone from your job who thinks about money in a way nobody you grew up with has ever thought about it, and who does it without any apparent effort, the way a fish doesn't think about water. You still show up for the things that matter, the birthdays that count, the hospital nights, the funerals, the 3 a.m. phone calls where a real friend simply has to be a body in the room. You are not vanishing. You are not too good for anyone, but the casual, reflexive 3 times a week contact begins to thin. The default, purposeless hanging around that made up most of what the group ever actually was. It thins slowly, like a tide going out so gradually that you only notice when you finally look up and the water is somewhere it used to not be. And this is the part nobody warns you about, the part the motivational people leave out because it doesn't fit on a poster. It does not feel triumphant. It does not feel like winning. And be honest with yourself about this, because the internet will sell you the exact opposite. Real growth is almost never a montage. It is a long run of quiet, slightly lonely Tuesdays that absolutely no one claps for. It feels like a small, specific grief, the kind that has no funeral and no name. You are not losing these people, exactly, but you are losing the version of yourself that fit among them without any effort at all. The self who could just split the bill and laugh and run, no calculation underneath the conversation. You are trading a warm, effortless, inherited belonging for a colder, chosen, deliberate one. And you are not yet sure, some nights, that it is a good trade. Some nights you are certain it is a mistake. Some nights you sit in the car outside your own building and miss, physically, like an ache in the chest, the boy who crashed into the hedge and never once thought about a ledger. You keep going anyway, not because you are sure. You are not sure. You keep going because a small, stubborn, wordless part of you has quietly decided it would rather be uncomfortable and moving than comfortable and completely, permanently still. Finding people who are building. And then, without any ceremony, a new layer of people begins to enter your life. They are not wealthier than you. Not yet. And it isn't the point. Some of them, at this moment, have less than you do. But they talk about money in a way that stops you cold the first time you really hear it. They talk about it as a tool, not a threat. As something to aim, direct, and deploy. Not something to merely survive and endure and flinch away from. The first few of these conversations feel slightly uncomfortable, faintly foreign, the way any new language feels clumsy in your mouth before it becomes yours. And then, one ordinary day, without your ever catching the exact moment it turned over, the new language feels normal, and the old language starts to sound strange to you instead. The one where money was only ever a low humming source of dread, the water you were all swimming in without a name for it. You can hear it now, at the old table. You couldn't before. Something shifts in the way you choose people, and it shifts so quietly you only see it in hindsight. You stop choosing friends based on who is available. You start choosing them based on who is building. Not building wealth necessarily, not that narrow. Building anything real, a business, a body of work, a marriage they actually tend, a discipline, a self they can respect in a dark window at night. People who are in motion recognize each other across a crowded room, the way two people who speak a rare language recognize each other in a foreign country. And they find each other, and they pull each other forward almost without meaning to. The group gets smaller. That genuinely surprises you, because you had always quietly assumed that growth meant more. More names, more numbers, a wider net. And here it is meaning less. The anthropologist Robin Dunbar spent years measuring exactly this, and the number he kept arriving at is smaller than anyone wants it to be. Underneath the wide outer circles, most people carry only about 5 genuinely close relationships, no matter how large the crowd around them grows. Maybe 5 people you would call without needing a reason or an occasion. 3 you would call at midnight and know, with total certainty, that they would pick up on the second ring, already awake to the fact that you would not call at midnight for nothing. And 1, exactly 1. Who knows the actual number? Not the salary you mentioned casually, deflectingly, in conversation, the real one, the net worth figure, the truth that lives under the truth you tell everyone else. And these people do something the old group, for all its warmth, never once did. They challenge you. One of them looks at what you charge for your work, actually looks at it, and tells you, flatly, without softening it, that your pricing is an insult you are paying to yourself, and to fix it by Monday. Another one introduces you, offhandedly, to a single person over a single coffee, and that one introduction quietly bends the entire trajectory of a project, of a year, maybe of a decade. A third disagrees with you at dinner, sharply, in front of everyone, and neither of you apologizes afterward, and neither of you needs to. Because you both understand, without saying it, that the disagreement was the most generous thing that happened all night. Comfort is not the same as friendship. That is when it finally lands. The thing it takes most people half of their entire lives to learn, if they are lucky enough to learn it at all. If the right person says the hard thing at the right unbearable moment, the most valuable thing a friend can ever give you is not comfort. It is accurate information about your blind spots, the ones you cannot see precisely because they are yours. About your real potential, which is almost always higher and more frightening than the modest estimate you have quietly agreed to live inside. About the exact, unflattering size of the gap between what you are actually doing and what you are plainly capable of doing. That information is rare. it is expensive to give, because to give it honestly is to risk the friendship itself. And most people, even good people, even people who love you, would quietly rather keep you comfortable than keep you honest. Because keeping you comfortable is safe, and keeping you honest is not. Warmth without honesty is comfort. Say it plainly. It is pleasant, and it is genuine, and it is not the same thing as friendship at its highest level. Comfort tells you what you want to hear so that the evening stays soft and easy and nothing has to change. Something else, something far rarer and more valuable, tells you what you need to hear even when it costs both of you the ease, even when it makes the drive home quiet. So you stop measuring friendship the way you always have, the way everyone is taught to. You stop measuring it by how long you have known someone, as if accumulated years were a kind of merit badge, as if time served were the same as loyalty proven. It isn't. Time is not loyalty. Time is just time. A bad friend of 20 years is still a bad friend, only better rehearsed. You start measuring friendship by a harder, cleaner standard. How honest is this person willing to be with me when honesty is genuinely inconvenient for them? How much do they actually want me to win, out loud, in the real world, versus how much do they just want tonight to stay comfortable? Here is a test you can actually run. Think of the last time you were about to make a real mistake. A job you should not have taken. A number you were quietly underpricing. A relationship everyone could see coming but you. And ask which of them told you, out loud, before it happened, while it was still awkward and still fixable. Not after. That before it happened list is your true inner circle, and it is almost never the same as the list of the people you happen to see the most. And the moment you change that measure, some of the old friendships begin to feel strange, not hostile. Hostile would be easier, cleaner, something to push against, just strange. There is a new half second of silence in certain rooms when your name comes up and you are not in them. Someone makes a comment that lands slightly wrong and hangs in the air a beat too long before the laugh arrives to bury it. A favor gets asked. And for the very first time in your life, you can feel unmistakably that it is being asked because of the number, not because of the history. And you hate that you can feel the difference, and you cannot unfeel it. You navigate this carefully because there is a trap waiting on both sides of the path. You do not want to become the kind of person who measures loyalty by wealth level, who quietly audits every old friend by what they can now offer or extract. That is its own poverty, a worse one than the empty account ever was. But you also cannot pretend that money hasn't changed the dynamics, because it has, plainly, and pretending otherwise is just a more polite and more corrosive kind of dishonesty. So, you hold both true things at once, in the same hand, without dropping either, and you keep walking, and you pay attention, and you try to stay kind without going blind. The few who truly stay, and here, after all of it, is who stays. The ones who stay are the ones who treated you exactly the same when you had nothing at all. The ones whose behavior toward you did not shift by 1 degree, up or down, when your number finally moved. They do not perform anything. They don't need anything from you except the one thing they always had and always wanted, which is simply you, the actual you, nickname and flaws and all. And you would do anything, anything at all, at any hour, for these people without keeping any score, because with them there was never once a score to keep. That was always the whole nature of it. The list of these people is short. When you were younger, you thought a short list was a failure. Quiet evidence that you had not been likable enough, or open enough, or magnetic enough, or lucky enough to gather a crowd around you. Now, finally, you understand that the shortness is not the failure. The shortness is the entire point. And say this one to yourself plainly, because the whole culture is built to make you doubt it. 3 real people is not a consolation prize. 3 real people is the jackpot, while almost everyone else spends a lifetime chasing 300 acquaintances and calling it a network. A short list is not what is sadly left over after you lost people along the way. A short list is what is left standing after the truth blew through. And the truth is a strong and honest wind. And most things, it turns out, are simply not built to survive it. The few that are load-bearing. So you stop counting how many people are in your life. That was always the wrong number, a vanity number. A number for other people. You start counting a completely different one instead. How many people actually know you? Not know of you, know you. The real you. The one under the number. The one who still, on the hard nights, feels like the kid with $52 and a locked phone face down on the table. From the outside, the group at this level is almost completely invisible. There are no public announcements, no performance of closeness staged for anyone else to admire, no proximity posted anywhere. Just a phone that spends most of the day, on purpose, in a drawer, and 3 or 4 people who get a response from you within the hour, reliably, no matter what time that hour happens to be, no matter what else is on fire. And here is the thing that genuinely surprises the people who only ever watch wealth from the outside, from the cheap seats. These friendships are not transactional. The lazy assumption is always that people with money only keep other people with money, and that all of those friendships are secretly about access and leverage and what can be quietly extracted from whom. And some of them, honestly, are exactly that. You have seen it up close now. It is real and it is bleak, but those are never the ones that last. The ones that last were built on something that was standing there long before the money ever arrived, and simply, quietly survived its arrival. A shared view of what actually matters when everything else is stripped away, a willingness to tell the truth precisely when the truth is inconvenient. A history that has nothing whatsoever to do with any of the numbers, and never did, and never will. The bill, again. You are worth more now than you could ever have imagined, back at that first table, at 23. And not only in the account, though the account is real now, and quiet, and no longer a source of dread on Thursday nights. You are worth more in the harder to measure ways, the ways no statement prints, in the sheer quality of the small handful of people who would answer the phone at midnight, in the amount of honesty you can now not only survive but actually want, actually seek out, actually thank people for, and the real ones, the short list ones, the load-bearing ones, still call you by the ridiculous nickname you had back then, the one from a story only 5 people left alive on this earth still remember. They will call you by it at your funeral, and it will still, after everything, be the single truest thing anyone says about you all day. The bill comes to $364. Someone at the table suggests splitting it evenly, and you remember, all at once, the last time you sat at a table exactly like this one and stayed perfectly silent about your $52. You remember exactly what that silence felt like from the inside, the specific weight of it, low in the stomach, the calculation running its small, relentless engine underneath every laugh, every story, the whole warm, bright surface of the night, while you smiled and said even is fine. You pick up the bill, not because you want to be seen picking it up, not for the gesture, not for the story, not for the small, warm, private rush of being, finally, the one who can. You pick it up quietly, almost invisibly, because one of the people at this exact table sat inside that same silence beside you 10 years ago, back when neither of you could have covered $52 to save your lives. And never once, not one single time, in all the years since, did they make you feel it. That is what all of it was for. Not the restaurant, not the number, that. And somewhere else tonight, in a city you will never visit, under the same indifferent sky, a group of 7 people who grew up together are splitting a bill evenly, and one of them has already opened the app under the edge of the table. One of them is doing the math in their head and saying absolutely nothing. They feel the $52 gap like a stone pressed into the sole of a shoe, and they are utterly certain, the way you once were, that they are the only person at the table who has ever felt it. That person is not behind. They are just at the very beginning of understanding what the group around them will cost them and what, if they are honest and lucky and brave in small, boring ways, it will one day give back. At every single level that follows this one. So, here is the only question worth leaving you with tonight. It is not who is in your group. You already know who is in your group. The question is quieter than that and harder, and it will follow you home. Look around your real table, the one in your actual life, not the one in your feed. Which of these people are mirrors, faithfully showing you only what already exists, only the level you are standing on right now? And which of them are windows, showing you something you cannot yet see, but could, if you were only willing to stop splitting the bill evenly and start telling the truth about the gap? And if a single name surfaced while you were listening, someone who is a mirror or someone who is a window, leave it in the comments. You would be surprised how many people are sitting at the very same table tonight, quietly certain it is only them. Sit with that one tonight. Don't rush it. You already know at least one of the names.